Welcome to the WZCCA Connect podcast series, an initiative by the World Zarathushtri Chamber of Commerce, Australia. I'm your host, Jimmy Medora, and today we will be talking about catching creativity, not COVID, with three young creative talents, Jehan and Virat, Zoran and Virat Nehru. Over to you three guys. Introduce yourselves.
Firstly, thank you so much, Jimmy and the WZCCA Australia for having us over. It has been a very, very rough year, to say the least, and a challenge for all of us, creative people and I think talents across the world, especially when life has been uncertain. However, there's always hope when you're a creative talent, when you happen to be associated with things which perhaps bring a smile on people's faces, whether it's through the digital platforms, whether it's through films, whether it's through cinema. And I think I've been no less than that. I think privileged and blessed to be in Sydney, where we've been able to continue making films and continue making some good work, despite the challenges, despite the sort of roadblocks. And I think the medium and platform has been very, very kind to us. Things like Instagram, like Facebook, social media particularly has really elevated its means to be able to channelize and leverage that talent. So wonderful to be over here and talk about it more.
Thanks, Zoran, and thanks, Jimmy and the WZCCA for this podcast initiative. I'm Jehan and Virat, filmmaker, director, producer, and I have done multiple short films in Sydney, crewed on them, directed, even producing now. And yeah, it's been an interesting year, and happy to be here and talk about it.
Thank you, Jehan. Thank you, Zoran. And thank you, Jimmy. And thank you, WCCA, for inviting me. I'm Virat Nehru. I'm a poet, a writer, and also on the other side of the spectrum, I'm a film festival programmer. So a lot of things that Jehan would be making, I hope to put on in film festivals and schedule them later on whenever he's ready to showcase them to the world, that is. And so it's exciting, actually, to be on both sides of the spectrum, to be, on one hand, creating work for the world to see, and also then putting on a lot of work for the world to see as well in these times, which are challenging and quite different. I think we put on an inaugural Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival this year with about 10 features, 40 shorts from over 20 countries in very different circumstances from usually there would be. So it was very exciting, very challenging, but learned a lot. It was a steep learning curve to put on a film festival during COVID, which I think you can take away from a lot from that. Just realizing, things that you never thought about that you would be thinking about, like sanitizing stations, social distancing, knowing how seating arrangements should work, and just bringing people to the cinema in a virtual space and out there into the real world to see how you can watch a movie, which would be a rebellious act. I never thought watching a movie in a theater would be so life-threatening. But I guess that's where we are in 2020, where watching, a movie in a theater could actually kill you. So this is where we are. Hopefully, what Jehan makes is less life-threatening. What do you think?
Yeah, there's no way to sugarcoat it. This year has been really bad for film and for the film industry, especially in America. Theaters are all shut. No one can go anywhere to grab their entertainment fix, and it's been very tough on the industry because no one's getting work. Actors are home, not doing anything, and it just shows that without creativity in the film industry, it's just very boring. But some people do take opportunities, and that's where I come in. I did a short film called Hey Dad about COVID-19, and it's a narrative short about how COVID has impacted an individual, and it's very. What I wanted to portray in the film is, look, this is a very serious situation going on right now in the world, and how best to showcase this through the medium of film. Obviously, when filming, safety practices have to be in place, wearing masks, hand sanitizer is a must and social distancing, but when filming, it does become hard to do all those things at once, and it can be very challenging. Especially when I was filming Hey Dad, there's a scene where we had to do multiple takes on a train, and at first my producer and we were discussing, how can we do this? Will Sydney Trains let us film on there? And at first they said no because of all that's going on, and we thought, okay, this is going to be hard to film. Then we'll have to rearrange the script and do something else that will work the narrative. But thankfully, in Sydney, in Australia, COVID-19 is under control, which is good for the film industry over here. But they came back to us a couple weeks later saying, you know what, you can film on the train. You just need to be careful, follow all these safety practices. And that's how we got to film on the train. We had to make sure that everyone, we got our temperatures checked before going on the train. We also had lots of hand sanitizer and face masks on board, and we booked out a carriage for all just for the crew and cast, so no other people can come on the carriage, no public can come on the carriage, which is another way of preventing the spread of COVID-19. And so it was a very challenging shoot because it wasn't done in it wasn't done in a series of quick days. It was done throughout multiple weeks, and there was always challenges on set. But yeah, filming during this pandemic is a blessing and a curse at the same time. But that's where you promote your film, and that could be a selling point. And I think Zoran might have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, Jehan, I couldn't agree more. Being an actor, presenter, and a motivational speaker, and I think my experience as an actor for the last 11 to 12 years in various different parts of the world, having been brought up in Oman, and then I was in New York for 4.5 years, where my first film, Strangers, released at the New York Indian Film Festival, after which I was in Mumbai, doing various different films and work, of course, at a better time, and we weren't struck with the unfortunate pandemic that we currently are in. But I will say, I think there is no denying that what Virat and, Jehan have mentioned just a minute back about the challenges that this unfortunate period poses upon us as creative talents, as people who want to create good work, content creators, and even otherwise. However, if there is one thing that cinema and art has taught me, is that you never give up hope. The idea is to be able to create a message in the world that in some way or the other can facilitate a certain kind of work that people can look up as inspiration. So I think I like to look at the positives of it. This year has given me a lot of opportunity, leveraging my ability to kind of explore the social media and digital platforms. I've been involved in a cricket show as recent as the IPL just got over, where I've been shooting my part from Sydney, and of course my producers and co-hosts are in Mumbai, in Delhi. And I think that kind of cross-culture work does tend to take place as well, which lets you know that work is possible if you truly are in it. But of course, it's difficult. The one thing I will say that a big prop to Zoom for making a lot of the communication possible. Because face-to-face meetings don't happen, interactions can't happen, and that's when we realize that like Microsoft Teams, like Zoom, have facilitated long conversations amidst creative talents, interviews, podcasts, webinars, whatever it is. We at the WZCC Australia have done various different webinars through Zoom as well. So that way the work hasn't really stopped. We find different ways and mediums to do the same thing. Of course, there are challenges, and there always will be, but that doesn't take away the fact that yes, this year has been extremely difficult for all of us. But again, I think once the work starts, and I think once you're completely and fully into it, then I think it tends to sort of take its own space and time. I, in fact, did a film last year called Escape, and it was about a psychopath coming out of hospital, and it was just luckily right before COVID, and I think around that time. Nonetheless, it was a short film. and that spoke about how nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of people have been suffering from mental health. A lot of people have been suffering from issues and aspects concerning the mind, and how to sort of productively use their own space and talent. And I think the idea is to be able to create a film, to be able to create a product that in some way, that, like I mentioned a few minutes back, that can inspire people that they aren't the only ones facing an issue, and at the same time do something about it. I think when you have a canvas like Instagram and YouTube, the idea is to use it as best to your potential and ability. So I think that's the positive of being a creative talent during a pandemic.
A question I have for the three of you is relates to funding. Funding at any time is a very difficult proposition, but more so now in COVID. Any thoughts?
Sure, Jimmy. I think you've stepped on a nerve there with your question about funding. As a film festival programmer, I can say that funding is difficult. I think this year specifically has been quite a challenge, specifically because I think distributors and agents and how they market films has been quite different, right? I mean, a lot of film festivals, I remember I used to cover the film festival circuit in person. So one of my favorite things is just, visiting different cities and knowing and understanding their film culture, whether it's Berlin, whether it's Sydney, whether it's Melbourne, whether it's Toronto with TIFF. And this year, I think just getting my confirmation that I'm going to TIFF, but I'm actually just in my bedroom essentially, and just opening my laptop, and it's all virtual. So you get your confirmation saying, welcome, here's your TIFF pass, but you're not in Toronto. You're just migrating from your living room to your bedroom, and you feel like you've gone to Toronto, but you're not. You're just migrating from your living room to your bedroom, and that's the one thing I've missed. I think from a funding point of view, as a film festival, what you try to do is bring together a community of film lovers together. And what you want funding for is basically to generate that sense of community. So, and it's very difficult to do that if it's all online. I think a lot of film festivals had to pivot, and they had to change their scheduling to be completely online. And I think that's fine. But basically, the basic genesis of a film festival is that you get a lot of people together, they sit in a dark room, and then they come out, and they're very excited. There's all this bubbling, nervous energy when you see a good film. And when you see, especially an opening night film, a big gala, film experience, you come out and you share that experience with someone who's loved the film as well. And a lot of that funding goes into making that experience happen. And I think this year, specifically because of the pandemic, all of us were just in our own rooms and separately just opened our laptop, watched the movie, and when we wanted to talk about the film, we just shut our laptops, and so it wasn't the same. And I think that was basically the problem. So a lot of our funding this year, specifically for the inaugural Sydney Science Fiction Film Festival, was to try to make that experience happen again, to remind people what they were missing out on after a whole year of, realizing that cinemas are dangerous, that shutting them down, and basically that you couldn't be in the cinemas again. Just try to bring back people into the cinemas, see if we can just make that sense of community happen again. And we were also pushing the shorts as basically an example of promoting new filmmakers. So I think because honestly, the life and blood source of any film festival is new talent. And to promote that we thought having 40 shorts as a showcase is a very large number of short films for any film festival to go with. We just had 10 features but had 40 shorts. Have more short films than feature films in terms of the ratio of films to be choosing, I think was a conscious decision, which was just about, pump some lifeblood back into the film festival scene so that people are excited, new people, new blood, new talent can see their films on screen again. Because I think the biggest euphoric experience for anyone, especially a director or a young director, is seeing their name up on the big screen as a director in credits for the first time, and how excited it makes you feel. So I think a lot of our funding, a lot of our arguments with sales agents, because, I don't know if behind the scenes as a festival programmer, now that I'm on that circuit, I realize, the dirty politics that also goes around making sure, because all the distributors and sales agents also want to get the best deal for their film. So, you're competing against Netflix, you're competing against Amazon as a film festival where you are basically the underdog. Because basically they'd like to sell to Netflix, they'd like to sell to Amazon because that's the most return for money, and they have more audiences. So you have to position yourself as a film festival that, hey, hang on, you're worth it. You basically be tapping into an audience that will see your film, will appreciate it on the big screen. Netflix, Amazon are great for streaming services. They might get your film in front of a lot of people, but it's not the same as a big screen experience. So I think just positioning that, seeing what that is, and understanding that now as a film festival, you're not just competing with other film festivals, you're also competing against streaming giants. And COVID really, I think, drove the point home, essentially, because suddenly everything was available for streaming. Pretty much, nothing was in the theaters, so everything was direct to streaming. Suddenly it was direct video on demand is the new way of seeing movies. So suddenly you were competing with sales agents, with programmers, to say that, hang on, why should we send our film to you, and why shouldn't we send it to Netflix or Amazon? And you have to have a solid answer to make sure that you're utilizing your funds correctly, but most importantly, also making sure that you're promoting new talent to make sure that they can see their films on screen properly. So Jehan, I think hopefully in the future we might see one of your films up there.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. So last year I made my very first short film called Purgatory, and it was my major project from university, and funding was the most important part of getting that film on the road. And the way I did it, and most people do it, is through crowdfunding. I feel like crowdfunding is a great way of getting funds for your short film, and through crowdfunding, it doesn't just allow you to make your film. It also shows that people are interested in your film. And through the WZCCA, I was able to raise over like $2,000 in under 48 hours for my film. And I thought, wow, people actually do want to see my film. And that just motivates me to make a better film, And that's, at the end of the day, funding, I feel, is really underlooked, but very important as well. And you made a very good point that streaming services are the new big hot thing right now. But I also want to say, without theater going experiences, it's not the same. Going into a theater, experiencing a movie in the theater for the first time is very great. It's just completely different to watching it at home. And I feel funding is important for making a film and getting a quality product out of it, but businesses also need funding, and theater movies in Australia are doing creative ways to make their theaters run. Like you can hire out a theater for like $500 just to play games on the big screen, and you could, they're showing old movies, they're repeating old films, so you can experience that film again on the big screen, as if you would have watched it for the first time. And I think trying to stay on top of these try to stay on top of all this going on with the pandemic is very important. I know for Hey Dad, the film that I was just directing, I also crowdfunded through Indiegogo, and it's very obviously I can't expect everyone to chip in, and that's what when I posted, look, I'm doing this. If you could spare some cash, that would be amazing. But if you can't, I know it's hard times, but if you could just share it and spread the word, that would be amazing. And it works. It really does work. I know someone, well, I don't know them, but someone from America just donated $100 towards my film, and I was like, there you go. Like sharing does work a lot. And so it's important to realize how crowdfunding at least is imperative to a quality product. And while I was crowdfunding, I also had perks through Indiegogo, which gives someone who's donating towards a film like certain perks. So someone who donates $10 can get a thank you card, someone who donates 50 special thanks, and someone who donates $100 executive producer's credit on their film, which they can showcase on LinkedIn or something like that. Look, I've actually worked on a film. So you're giving them something and you're getting something in return, which is very important. And I think spreading the word across social media is absolutely integral to getting funds. And I think you'd know all about that, Zoran.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with the two of you, Virat and Jehan. I think, but I have to say this: I think funding, no matter being a pandemic, not being a pandemic, has always been a struggle and a challenge. Really, I think essentially it all boils down to a good product and how good you're able to sort of market the kind of message you want to put out there. But I have to say, props to Virat and his team for actually putting up the Science Fiction Film Festival, one of its first kind in 2020, which had some sort of physical contact where people could actually come and put together red carpet and sort of the perks of being at a film festival, which kind of orchestrates the idea of getting back into the whole feel of things, essentially, because we're all tired of sitting in front of our laptops watching things virtually and digitally. Speaking of funding, it's always been a challenge, but nonetheless, I will say, being someone who has been associated with the social media scene of things and perhaps making digital content every now and then, it all boils down to the kind of product you're making. So the eyeballs are out there. People are willing to kind of chip in. People are willing to kind of put their money where it really matters. People do want to be able to be a part of good content, quality content. And I think Virat brought up a very important point about how filmmakers rather have their films fighting at a film festival, where you obviously have OTT platforms also fighting for the same thing. So in a nutshell, I think it's also a massive traffic jam of good content, which I think is a very good problem to have in today's day and age. It's all about where you can leverage your ability and showcase what you really have on a canvas. And there is absolutely no harm in showcasing your film on a film festival scene, because it has its crowd, it has its own audience, it has its own sort of viewership. But I think the way we're moving forward, I think with the way in which things are happening digitally also, and I think with platforms like Netflix, like Amazon Prime, etc., you have Showtime and etc. These guys are really coming up with some of the most incredible quality content, and I think they in many which ways are building up studios close to $80 billion last year, if I'm not mistaken. Netflix, which is much more than what a Hollywood studio can do, whether it's Sony Pictures, and I think well-known filmmakers, celebrities and actors are also I guess migrating to that kind of a platform, because they realize that essentially this is the way forward. One thing the pandemic has taught the film industry and perhaps creative people also is that do not ever underestimate the power of social media. If there is one thing that you can do with all the issues and all the challenges, obviously funding being at the top of the priority list, because you have to go and beg the studios if you're a top player. But if you're a startup company, if you're a new time director, a new time actor, a new time producer, you will face challenges, but that's the time when you really have to hone your skill. And I always say this to people who want to take up filmmaking as a serious profession. If you want to get into this business, it's going to be very difficult. I, at the age of 30, and I think a decent amount of work under my belt, I do realize the challenge lies in front of me every single day. And then it really boils down to the kind of craft you kind of put out there. So you tend to realize that no matter who you are and what you do, it's the product that really matters, which will convince enough people that this is something worthy of putting the money into. And I think when that happens, I guess the recognition does take place. But 2020 has been challenging, and I think the challenge continues even as we move along towards the beginning of 2021. But I think the shift will have to come with a certain understanding that digitizing content is the way to go. Digitizing content is the way to monetize it, and I think cinemas will come back in its place of business, but that will take a while. In the meanwhile, use digital platforms as much as possible, and I think if you can use it effectively, the funding will come regardless.
I just wanted to respond to you, Zoran, when you were talking about filmmakers. I remembered a joke, which is about basically that there's this old joke saying that basically all critics are failed filmmakers. So if you become a critic, you basically failed at filmmakers. And basically, secondly, if you're a failed critic, you become a film programmer. So I guess I'm number 3 on that list, because I was a critic before and now I'm a failed critic. I've become a film programmer. So that's how my trajectory has gone. So I think, Jehan, you're definitely doing much better than I am. So keep sticking to that dream, because once you fail, the next job is being a critic, and after that you can become a film programmer. So I think eventually, if you do fail, there are certain backup options that you do have, even if you don't think that it's going to work out for you. But all jokes aside, I think what Zoran has said about streaming platforms is actually a very valiant point, because right now, in terms of numbers, Queen's Gambit, a series about chess, with Anya Taylor-Joy is the largest watched series in the world with 85 million viewers. Who would have thought that a series about chess, the most boring sport in the world, I mean, okay, maybe not that boring, but it's boring for a lot of people, would be made so interesting just by virtue of content and the way it's shot and the way it's acted. I would not have thought, maybe, 20 years ago, that maybe a life story about Vishwanathan Anand, one of our great grandmasters of chess, could be something that people would want to watch. But if, chess can be made interesting, which is the most boring sport in the world, then clearly the way you market your content, the way you make your content in terms of quality content, anything can be made interesting. If chess can be interesting, anything can be interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, I second that. Queen's Gambit was amazing. I'm not a big chess fan, but the way they did that show was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Netflix, here's your free review. If you want, sponsor us, but that was an amazing show.
I just want to reply to what Virat said about content really going viral no matter who you are and what you do. You, as a filmmaker, as a creative talent, don't ever know where it's going to resonate, how it's going to resonate. That's one of the reasons why a recent phenomena like Indian matchmaking became a social viral phenomena where people were tweeting about it, writing about it, reviews left, right, and center, and the stars and of course the makers of it became sensations. They were all over. The lead actress was on BBC. So I think this also brings about an interesting point that you never really know who you're connecting to, no matter how silly, menial, crazy, over the top the content may be, the genre may be. There is someone out there who is grasping all the madness you can do, and I think that is the most beautiful anonymous nature of OTT platforms creating content and leveraging it.
Talking of Indian matchmaking, just saying it out there, putting it out there, Zoran currently is single. So this is not a plug for Indian matchmaking. This is a plug for the fact that Zoran is single. And if you want to actually... okay, guys out there and women out there, most importantly women out there, not guys, but you know who to contact. So let WZCCA know and let Jimmy know if you have any interesting proposals from Seema Auntie. So you know who to contact.
Netflix, if you're listening, please hire me as soon as possible. I can't ask for a bigger plugin.
This was really real fun. I think we sort of, I feel privileged actually to be able to showcase these three young creatives, Virat, Jehan, and Zoran. And, I think we are really blessed. Sometimes we don't realize how lucky we are in Australia. So anyway, thank you guys. It was really, really a pleasure to host you guys. And our listeners, thank you for listening to Catching Creativity, Not COVID. And before we sign off, please don't forget to show some love for the WZCC Australia's WZCC Connect podcast series. Thank you. Good night.